Citizens United versus FEC was a landmark court case in 2010 that has had a significant effect on politics today. But to understand its significance and how it came to be, let's go back to 1976 to look at another court case, Buckley versus Valeo. The year is 1976, and not very long ago, Nixon got busted for the Watergate scandal, which revealed some shady funds used in his re-election campaign and his use of espionage to win his second term. Trust in politicians was at an all-time low, and the Federal Election Campaign Act was born. The FECA placed strict limits on individual contributions to campaigns and limited contributions from candidates and political parties to avoid giving wealthy candidates a major advantage. The act really did not sit well with Senator James Buckley, who believed the act to violate his First Amendment right to express himself through political contributions. He filed a lawsuit against Francis Valeo, Secretary of the FEC. The question posed before the SCOTUS was, does limiting campaign contributions infringe upon the First Amendment? The court came to a split decision, but ultimately did rule 5-4 in favor of Buckley. They had decided that individual contribution limitations were constitutional because direct contributions to campaigns could lead to a quid pro quo relationship between candidates and donors. They did, however, strike down any limitations on personal candidate contributions for their own political campaigns, as they found it to be an infringement upon their First Amendment right to free speech, which included spending as much money as you like to gain an advantage in an election. Though the dissenters disagreed, believing that the First Amendment did not extend to money spent to win elections, and that limitations prevented corruption. This case essentially established the doctrine that money equals speech, and would go on to influence many court cases, including Citizens United versus FEC. Citizens United is a conservative nonprofit, and right around Democratic primaries in 2008, they wanted to release a critical documentary called Hillary, the Movie. The only problem was the Bipartisan Campaign Reform Act did not allow for corporate-funded political ads to be shown within a certain window before elections. Citizens United claimed that this violated the First Amendment right, and they sued the FEC. Citizens United versus FEC was an interesting court case. It is already established from Buckley versus Valeo that money equals speech, and campaign contributions are protected under the First Amendment. But Citizens United was not a person with rights. They were something else. A corporation. So this case poses the question, do corporations get rights too? The SCOTUS ruled 5-4 in favor of Citizens United. The majority opinion of the court was delivered by Justice Anthony Kennedy, and it was decided that free speech protections apply to corporations too, and so that any limitations on their speech is unconstitutional. Justice Stevens delivered the dissenting opinion. Corporations should not be afforded the same rights as people, and regulations on their campaign contributions are necessary to avoid corruption in the government. This case would forever change political campaign funding and is largely responsible for the creation of super PACs and the massive amount of money being spent on elections and campaigns today. It also struck down the BCRA electioneering communication limitations, allowing for constant corporate funding of political ads, right up to and on Election Day. In 2014, 4 years after the Citizens United case, Sean McCutcheon was looking to donate to a large number of Republican candidates and committees. He was only allowed a measly couple $1,000s per candidate, but figured he would make up for it by donating the maximum amount to a large number of candidates. He was met with disappointment, though, when he found out that he could only donate up to a maximum of 16 candidates. He didn't know what to do with his ridiculous sums of money, so he lawyered up and, along with the Republican National Committee, sued the FEC. Man, they really can't catch a break. In yet another split 5-4 decision, the court ruled in favor of McCutcheon. The majority opinion delivered per curiam was that the right to participate in democracy through political contributions is protected by the First Amendment. The dissenting opinion delivered by Justice Breyer was that the majority decision was undemocratic because it amplified the political power of the wealthy and it gives them an unfair advantage, and that aggregate contribution limits serve to stop corruption. This case gave even more political leverage to the wealthy by allowing them to contribute as much as they want across as many candidates as they please, so long as they stay within contribution limits to individual candidates. Super PAC spending on campaigns went from $600 million from during the 2012 election cycle to $2.6 billion in the 2020 election cycle, and with the total spending on the presidential race having doubled since then, going from $6 billion to $14 billion. None of these figures account for undeclared dark money from 501c4 organizations. Each of these cases had to do with the First Amendment right to free speech and the classification of political spending as free speech, with much of the same reasoning across the court opinions and shared concerns for how this may cause corruption in the government. Enjoy this historically accurate retelling of each court case. Hey, Supreme Court, you know what I really think should be protected under my First Amendment right? Spending money on political campaigns.
Yeah, that sounds reasonable. First Amendment right expanded.
Yes. Whoa. Hey, Supreme Court, do you think it's possible for me to get the same deal as that guy?
But you're like a corporation.
Supreme Court, it's always been a personal dream of mine to be a real boy with First Amendment rights and everything.
Very well. I hereby declare you a real boy with First Amendment rights and everything.
Yes. Hey, so if that corporation can spend as much as they want on political campaigns and call it their First Amendment right, then I can get that too, right? Because I'm like a real person.
Yeah, sure.